Every morning started the same. Steam rose from the sinks in the back of the diner, the hiss of hot water mixing with the clatter of dishes. The same chairs were misaligned, the same sugar jars half empty, and in the middle of it all was her, small frame, sleeves rolled, hair tied in the same neat knot. She wiped every glass until it caught light, not because anyone noticed. No one did, but because that's what her mother taught her. If your hands are still, your heart will grow tired. The bell on the door chimed, as it always did. Some customers didn't even look at her. Some waved her over with a flick of the wrist. Some barked their coffee orders without lifting their heads from their phones. She smiled at each one. Not a showy smile. Just enough to say, "I see you." She had worked at Pete's diner for nearly 5 years. Pete never said thanks, never raised her pay. He said things like, "You're lucky I keep you, and girls like you come and go." Maybe he was right. Most left. She stayed. No one knew her favorite flower was lavender, or that she carried a scarf with embroidered petals in her apron pocket, hand-stitched by her aunt before she passed. It wasn't much, but it was soft, and it reminded her that somewhere, once, someone cared enough to make something just for her. That Tuesday, the rain didn't stop. It had been gray since morning. By noon, the gutters were overflowing. Pete grumbled about muddy footprints and slow hours. The radio buzzed, tinny and low, playing a tune nobody recognized. Then the door opened. Not just a regular customer. Not a delivery. The kind of opening that made heads turn. He was soaked. The man looked like he had slept in the rain for days. His coat was torn at the cuffs, the fabric heavy and dark from water. A sour metallic smell followed him in. His beard was wild, shoes mismatched. A silence spread through the diner, not out of shock, but disgust. 2 women by the window turned away whispering. A man in a business suit sighed loudly and checked his watch. Pete stormed from the back. "Sir, you can't just—" But before he could finish, she was already at the counter. She didn't speak. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the scarf. The old man didn't meet her eyes. He sat at the farthest stool, hunched, dripping. She walked over anyway. Gently she unfolded the scarf, held it out. "It's clean," she said softly. His hands trembled as he took it. She poured him a glass of water, setting it down with both hands like it mattered. Then she walked away, without waiting for thanks. Pete cursed under his breath. No one said a word. The man wiped his face, slowly, carefully, as if the fabric was something rare. When he lowered his hands, his eyes were wet, not from rain. He didn't say a word, but before he left, he folded the scarf, placed it on the counter, and bowed his head. Later, when she picked it up, she noticed something she hadn't before. A corner of the fabric, damp but clean, still held the imprint of his grip. She tucked it back into her apron, and the day went on, like all the others. But something had shifted, just a little. He came back 2 days later, same seat, same silence. No one welcomed him. He slipped into the corner like a shadow. She didn't hesitate, poured him water, brought out a napkin. He accepted the napkin with slow hands. She offered a faint smile, then moved away. He came again the next week, then again, always alone, always quiet, never caused trouble, never asked for anything. She treated him like everyone else, a refill without being asked, a check-in without a stare. When the dishwasher forgot his glass, she brought it herself. Her movements were the same, steady, careful. But Pete noticed. One slow afternoon, when only a few tables were full, he muttered, "That guy's scaring off the good customers." She didn't respond. "I'm serious, Lucy," he said louder. "This ain't a shelter. You're the one keeping him here." She looked up. "I didn't invite him." "Well, he sure don't come for the food." That was it, for then. Pete didn't like arguments he couldn't win. But the next time the old man came, the diner was busier. A man in a white button-up made a loud sniff. He groaned. Seriously? She was pouring coffee for another table. She heard it. "This place smells like wet dogs. I bring clients here." The room went still. She walked over. "I'm sorry, sir. Can I move you to another table?" The man raised his voice. "I don't want another table. I want some hygiene standards." She glanced toward the kitchen, hoping someone might speak. No one did. Behind her, Pete's shoes squeaked across the tile. He was shouting before he reached them. "I've had enough, Lucy." She turned. "This is what happens when you play saint," he said, loud enough for everyone. "You've been encouraging that vagrant. Now customers are complaining, and it's on me." "I didn't," she began. Pete cut her off. "You're done here. Pack your things." She stood there, still holding the coffee pot. "Did you hear me?" he barked. "You're fired, and I don't want a scene." The man in the button-up leaned back, arms folded. Another server peeked from the kitchen, wide-eyed but unmoving. She didn't cry, didn't plead. She set the coffee pot down and walked to the back. The click of her shoes echoed. No one followed. She returned minutes later with her coat folded over one arm, scarf tucked beneath. Her eyes didn't meet anyone's. As she passed the counter, the old man was gone. He had slipped out, like always. She stopped by the man in the button-up, bowed slightly. "I'm sorry your experience wasn't good today," she said. He didn't respond. She left. The bell rang as the door shut. Later that night, the rain came. She sat at a bus stop, scarf in her lap. Her hands traced the embroidered flowers with her thumb. A breeze passed. Cold. She pressed the scarf to her cheek. The bus came and went. She didn't get on. Eventually, she walked 3 blocks to a closed bakery, leaned against the wall, and sat. Her coat was damp. She didn't care. She hadn't cried. Not from pride. There was just nothing left to spill. The next morning, she woke early out of habit. Her body still believed she had a shift. She ironed her uniform, stared at it, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. A message popped up on her phone. No name, just a number. "Pete hired someone already, some girl named Mel. She doesn't smile." She didn't reply. That afternoon, she passed by the diner. The sign was cleaned, prices redone. Same faces inside, except hers. She waited across the street, watching. The corner stool was empty. For the first time in days, something stirred behind her eyes. She blinked it away. The old man never came back. In the following days, she picked up shifts at a deli, washing trays, scrubbing the floor. Less pay. Kinder boss. No one learned her name. She didn't talk much, just smiled when needed, worked fast, never complained. At night, she still passed the diner, never stopped long, never saw him. Sometimes she wondered if he had only come for her, not for warmth, not for food, just for that one small thing she offered without asking. Now that it was gone, so was he. But she never said it aloud. Instead, she folded napkins, polished trays, kept her hands moving, because when they stopped, her heart grew tired. But no one noticed her hands were shaking. One night, as she was closing up the deli, a co-worker asked, "You used to work at Pete's, right?" She nodded. "Heard they changed owners last year. Someone bought up the whole block." She looked up, mildly surprised. "Really?" "Yeah. New money. Some developer, I think. No one's met him, though. Keeps things quiet." She nodded again, but said nothing. The information sat with her, like a question no one had asked out loud. That night, she walked a different route home. Passed by Pete's again. It looked cleaner now, quieter, a fresh coat of paint. New sign, but the windows were still the same. She stood across the street for a while. A man exited, young, in a white shirt and an apron. Not Pete. He laughed with a co-worker. The door swung shut behind them, catching a flicker of warm light inside. She didn't cross over, just stood there, watching. Something about the way the lights flickered against the window reminded her of that rainy afternoon, the steam, the hush, the old man's bowed head. The scarf stayed folded in her coat pocket, still carried every day. The stitching had frayed a little, but the petals remained. Before leaving, she whispered, though no one was around, "I hope you're warm, wherever you are." Then she walked home, quiet steps echoing on the empty sidewalk. She didn't tell anyone she was looking for work. She just showed up one morning at the back door of a small bakery on the edge of her neighborhood, hair tied back, hands clean. "I'm not here for a job," she said softly when the owner appeared. "I just want to help." The woman hesitated. Flour dusted her apron, and she wiped her palms on it out of habit. "We don't have much to give." "I don't need much." So she was given a rag and pointed toward the floors. The bakery was narrow, cluttered, always warm. She mopped in the mornings, washed dishes in the lull between breakfast and lunch. She never asked for breaks, never looked at the clock. At the end of each shift, she straightened the stacks of linen like they were pages in a book. No one asked her name. She didn't wear a name tag. She didn't mind. She still carried the scarf in her bag, still folded her coat at the end of the day as if someone would inspect it. Her shoes, worn thin at the soles, remained spotless. One rainy afternoon, as she took out the trash, she saw a boy no older than 7 standing under the eaves of a shuttered storefront across the street. His backpack sagged with water. His socks were soaked, clinging to his ankles. He didn't cry, just looked up at the clouds like he was waiting for something to stop. She paused, then quietly stepped back inside, reached for the loaf that had burned slightly at the edge, unsellable, but still warm. She wrapped it in paper, tucked it close, and stepped out again. She crossed the street and crouched in front of him, held the bread out without a word. He looked at her, then down at the bundle, then back up. She gave a small nod. That was enough. He took it. She smiled, then opened her bag again. This time, she pulled out her only umbrella, small, mended at one rib, a little crooked when opened. "Where's home?" she asked. He pointed without speaking. They walked slowly, her arm angled awkwardly to cover more of him than her. His silence didn't seem shy, just used to going unnoticed. At his building, he ran ahead without goodbye. The umbrella went with him. She didn't stop him. She watched the door close behind him, then turned, rain now falling freely on her shoulders, and walked back. No one asked why she was damp. She wiped the counter once more, even though it was already clean. Habit was comfort. That night, she paused by the hooks near the door. One was empty. She stood there a moment, fingers brushing the space, then turned off the lights. She kept walking the same way home, day after day, even when nothing seemed different. It had been weeks since the boy ran off with her umbrella. She hadn't thought much about it, just folded the empty space into her routine. The rain had stopped, then returned, as if nothing in the world had changed, but she had. One evening on her way home from the bakery, she passed the old diner. The lights were on, not just on, bright. The glass had been replaced, the walls painted over in cream. The door now bore a polished brass handle that gleamed even in the dusk. A new sign hung above the windows, Willow and Steam. She stopped across the street, watched through the glass. The layout was different now, tables spaced wider, lighting warmer. A man in a dark apron served coffee to a couple by the window. Everything moved slower, quieter. She would have walked on, but someone recognized her. "Lucy?" She turned. A former server, Dana, who had left Pete's months ago, stood holding a grocery bag. "They reopened it. Different owner now," Dana said. "Foreigner, I think. Keeps to himself. They say he bought the whole street." Lucy blinked. "All of it?" Dana nodded. "That's what I heard. Building by building, quietly." They parted ways. She didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, the bakery owner greeted her at the back door, unusually quiet. "Someone from the new place asked for you," she said. "They didn't say much, just that you should come by tomorrow. Try a shift." Lucy frowned. "But I didn't apply." The woman shrugged. "They said someone has already chosen you." She tried to ask who had sent for her, but no one ever gave a name. Just a nod, like it wasn't meant to be explained. The next day, she arrived at Willow and Steam just after sunrise. No one interviewed her. No forms. No questions. A man at the counter greeted her like he'd been expecting her all along. "Aprons are in the back. You'll figure the rest out." And she did. She moved like muscle memory, wiping, serving, resetting tables between guests. But the rhythm was different here, slower, kinder. No one barked orders. The staff smiled with their eyes. She caught herself humming under her breath, something she hadn't done in years. At the end of the shift, she stayed behind to sweep. As she rounded the corner to the quietest part of the shop, she paused. There, on the wall, hung a framed piece of calligraphy. Kindness is when no one sees, but still does it. Her breath caught. Beneath the frame, resting in a shallow glass box, was a folded handkerchief. Familiar. It was hers. The same scarf she had handed to a stranger in the rain. It was hers. The same one she had pressed into an old man's hand on a rainy afternoon. She hadn't seen it again since that day. She stepped closer, eyes scanning the thread, the wear in the fabric, the edge where his fingers had once clutched it with trembling hands. She didn't touch it. "Who put this here?" she asked a passing coworker. He glanced over, shrugged. "Been here since the opening. Owner's idea, I think." "Does anyone know who he is?" The man smiled faintly. "No one's really met him. Sometimes he leaves notes, that's about it." Lucy nodded, but her hands felt cold. That night she lingered by the wall long after the others had left. She didn't know what unsettled her more, the handkerchief's return or how naturally it seemed to belong. It sat there like it belonged, like it had been waiting. As she turned to leave, she noticed something else. Above the supply shelf in the back room was a clipboard, unused. Taped to it was a small piece of paper. She stepped closer. On the paper, scribbled in faded pen, was a single sentence. "You folded the corners like it mattered." Her throat tightened. She didn't know who wrote it, but someone had been watching or remembering. Outside, the night air was cool. She stepped into it slowly, unsure of what had changed. The street looked the same. The sky was still dark, but something was different. She walked halfway down the block before stopping, glancing back toward the window where the calligraphy hung. She glanced once more at the window. The reflection flickered. Or maybe it was just the light. She stood in front of the framed handkerchief longer than she meant to. The shop had emptied for the evening. Chairs turned upside down, lights dimmed to a warm hush. But she hadn't moved. Her hands were trembling. She didn't know why now, after all this time. The scarf had been out of her life for months. Maybe she had let it go, believing it had dissolved into the city, like everything else that slipped through unspoken days. But there it was. No doubt, it was the one she had given away. Worn, but preserved like something sacred. She was still staring when someone cleared their throat behind her. She turned. A man she'd seen once or twice, always quiet, stepped forward. Not the owner, but close. Maybe a manager. He held an envelope. "This was left for you," he said. She hesitated. "By who?" He looked at the framed handkerchief, then back at her. "It was written months ago. He said we'd know when to give it." She didn't take the envelope right away, only after a pause, as if her fingers had to remember how to reach for something meant for her. For a long second she just held it, afraid that reading it might change something she couldn't undo. The paper was soft, off-white. Her name wasn't on it, but somehow that made sense. Inside, a single sheet, handwritten, slanted, the ink slightly uneven. "I once owned this street, not just the building you stand in, but the row beside it, the bakery 2 blocks down, even the cracked newsstand on 4th. But I lost all of it, long before I sold it. There was a winter when the rooms in my house grew cold, not because the heating failed, but because the voices inside stopped speaking. Grief is like that. It doesn't shout, it just fades things. So I left. Everything. I wandered without a name, without expectation. People stopped seeing me. I stopped caring, until one afternoon in a diner where the light hit the table just right, you handed me a scarf. You didn't look away. You didn't wrinkle your nose. You didn't give with pity. You gave with hands that did not find me filthy. That moment pulled me back, not instantly, but slowly, like warmth creeping into frozen limbs. I never thanked you, not with words. I didn't know how. But I remembered. I kept the scarf. For months I carried it with me like proof that someone still saw me as human. Before I died, I sold what I had left, then bought it back quietly, not to build a business, but to build a space where people like you belong. The others will think it's coincidence. A kind stranger, a new owner. That's fine, but you'll know.
You weren't meant to serve coffee forever. You were meant to remind people how to serve gently. The scarf returns not to your hands, but to your place in this world. Thank you for keeping the human form for someone who had lost faith. The letter ended with no name, just the space where a signature might have been. She didn't cry, not at first. She folded the letter and held it to her chest, right over the place that still ached quietly. Her hands stopped trembling, her shoulders softened. Then she sat down on the floor beneath the frame, knees to her chest, and let her head rest against the wall. It was never about being recognized. It was never about being repaid. But somehow, the scarf had come back. Not to warm her neck, but to remind her she had been seen. Outside, the city breathed as it always had, slow, indifferent, passing by. But inside that quiet cafe, beneath a wall of words only one person truly understood, a woman sat still, eyes closed. Not the man, not a voice, just the quiet return of something she'd once given without thinking, and smiled. She didn't cry. She just stood there for a long time, in front of the calligraphy on the wall. The words didn't ask to be noticed. They were simply there, like she was. When the shop opened the next morning, she set each cup down with quiet care, as if even porcelain deserved kindness. Her voice was soft, like a song only the morning could hear. No one asked her where she had come from or why she'd stayed. No one mentioned the scarf in the frame or the note she carried now in her apron pocket. It didn't matter. She wasn't trying to be seen. She was just doing what felt right. Like always. A couple who came in every week paused at the door longer than usual. The place felt different, they said, not louder or newer, just lighter. Like someone had quietly opened a window and the air remembered how to move. No one in the shop knew why she had been chosen, but people lingered a little longer, as if something unspoken in the air had asked them to stay. And still, she never told anyone the story. She just refilled cups, folded napkins, and watched the rain when it fell. Only once did she glance at the scarf behind glass, then went back to work. And in that framed square of glass the scarf stayed. Not a symbol, not a prize. Just a quiet memory that had found its way home. There are kind deeds that no one needs to see, but still touch the hearts of those in need. If you have ever met such a person in your life, or you yourself have done a kind deed, leave a heart symbol below. Who knows, your story may inspire someone who's searching for their faith in kindness again. Or simply send this video to someone you believe, deep down, deserves more love than the world has given them. Sometimes, a quiet act is all it takes.